And we're back. Sorry for the delay, folks. It's been a long time. Been really busy, but we're here. Welcome back to Black Friday, where these opinions are not for sale. Your host here, Cristian. This week we have Rickey and we have Austin. Thanks for joining us, boys.
Howdy.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So before we jump into this, because we have a lot to discuss here, Rickey, tell me a little bit about yourself, background here for those that don't know you here that are tuning in.
I work for Turning Point USA. I'm the South Central High School Regional Manager, 29 years old. I'm the conservative on the panel and arguably the right one on the panel.
You wish, Rickey, you wish. But hi, guys. My name is Austin Erickson. I've been with Turning Point for about 5 years now and in the high school program. And, based out here in the Bay Area, California. And so shout out to all you right-leaning people out in those blue states.
California, a place that I don't miss as much as I probably should. Love my family. They're tuning in, watching here from California as well. But until things get in order, we won't be seeing that anytime soon. So, but man, so much to discuss. Chris is tuning in. Chris, we'll have you on here soon. Open up your schedule a bit more. Like Charlie said, make time to podcast. It's essential. You need to listen to your boss. So we had a heck of a week. There's a lot going on. We just went over 2 years here of the Dobbs decision, Roe v. Wade being overturned, as well as the presidential debate that just went down last week as well. So overall, I heard a lot of great feedback, especially for President Trump here. A lot of horrible feedback, especially from CNN and every single Democrat outlet there about Joe Biden's performance here. What do you make about this? Rickey, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think Joe Biden was who we've been saying he was. I think Trump did really well at kind of bringing it back and keeping it chill and relaxed to try and win over some of those moderate voters and turn the tides in his favor. But there's still some things that I'd like to see him to get better. And I'd like to hear from Austin as well on kind of what Austin wants to see out of him, because we need voters like Austin.
Austin, what's your recap of this debate?
Yeah, the recap and obviously all the headlines, are surrounding Biden. And I think that's somewhat fair. He had a really slow start. I think everyone kind of had that moment where he first started talking and everyone kind of like, is the volume down like on my TV? That was kind of the experience, I think, for a lot of people. Just seemed very, very frail, very quiet. And I think for a lot of people on the left, this was shocking because, people on the left believe the mainstream media, and the mainstream media have been running cover for him for the past, over 4 years, that there's been cognitive decline. On the right, we're just surprised that the drugs didn't work that they gave them, and so that was probably the bigger surprise on the right. But the left, this was the first time, I think, for a lot of people that they were like, whoa, wait a second, something's wrong. and I think at the end of the day, Biden isn't that popular. He doesn't have that cult-like following. You don't see people running around with, Biden 2024 hats. It's not that same energy like, the MAGA movement. And so I think it's a lot easier for the left to be able to, see that moment, kind of freak out, let's get someone else in there. So I think there's that portion. When it comes to Trump, I think he did okay. Some people are talking up like, he did amazing. He behaved himself is basically what he did, and how much of that was CNN's muting of the mics, I don't know. I think that really honestly helped Trump more than anything, probably, to stop kind of getting into bickering, because back in the last election cycle, it was too much. They were going back and forth and he came across too aggressive. So I think that Trump did okay. I think, we'll probably get into some of the issues, but overall, Biden had a slip up that probably he's lucky it wasn't worse, and Trump did a decent job.
It's just kind of like when you're up there against a, zombie, like literally like just kind of death warmed over. It's really hard to kind of mess it up. But I will say, not only did he not mess it up, he hammered home the points that matter the most. Arguably, handling, of course, the hot button issue. Everybody was talking about abortion. What I personally found that he did really well was talking about what's going on right now in the Middle East, whether or not he would support an independent state there in Gaza. And he said we'd have to look at it, but what we need to do is stop sending money to all these countries. I think he's absolutely right. I think right now we're currently funding both sides of that war. I think it's wrong. I think it's, spending all of our hard-earned money. People here aren't getting taken care of. And now we're seeing just the biggest fallout across college campuses, protests all over the street. And he doesn't have a grip of this. Joe Biden doesn't have a grip of this at all. I do think that if Trump were to get back in office, that these things would end almost immediately, sooner than later. And I don't think we would have lost any troops there under his watch, like he kept repeating. But I mean, I think he really wanted to drive the point home is that, when he was there, we weren't getting into these types of conflicts and that people weren't dying on our watch there. And I think he did a decent job there. Rickey, what are your takeaways here as well?
Yeah, so I would just say, one, as a conservative, I don't think that we should be wanting Joe Biden to kind of step away from the scene. I think, hey, take out your wallet, go to donate to the DNC because we want that dude on the stage and at election time because he's the guy we could beat, no problem. If all of his gaffes keep going, hey, that's the guy I want. As far as what you said, as far as having a grip on things, especially in the Middle East and stuff like that, I think that that's the real problem is we have a weak leader right now who doesn't have a grip on it. America has funded both sides of every conflict since the United States has been a country. And so my problem is less with that because I do think that we should stop while we're struggling as a country funding all of these wars. But it would be less noticeable if we just had a leader that had a grip on the situation. But he can't even get a grip of himself.
No, it's pretty clear, when we always say, I think we can all see what's going on here, just kind of the elephant in the room. But the camera cuts after the debate's over. Jill's walking him off stage like a decrepit old man. Like, this is like, let's get you back to the nursing home, Grandpa. Like, that's bad. Like, the biggest thing is at the world stage when all eyes are on us in the United States is you can't show weakness. It's pitiful. It's pitiful. It shows that we're getting taken advantage of in everything that we're doing. We're getting bad deals cut and nobody takes us seriously anymore. It's unfortunate. We're getting made fun of on a global scale. It's really just, it's sad. And I just can't believe people just want to go along and let it happen. I want to ask you guys is that, despite this debate, obviously I'd say being a big W here for Trump and obviously Joe Biden kind of just throwing it all away. Do you think that persuaded too many people? Do you think that there were that many people undecided, or do you feel like it was pretty much everybody has their mind made up right about now as far as who they're going to vote for in November?
I think there's probably 5 to 10% of the voting population or at least people that are going to vote that are undecided. That would be my guess. I think most people, at this point, it's been how many years of Trump? Hillary was first, then Biden. But is there really that much difference between Biden, Hillary, and Obama? Like it's been essentially the same ticket for the past 2 decades. And so if you haven't really decided by now, like there's a certain type of person that's in the middle right now, and you have to be very intentional to be in the middle. And so I would say, yeah, that 5-10%. And I was looking at this, and this is where I think Trump actually didn't do as well in the debate, was articulating to the common man, his message. And a lot of what he was saying was said in a way that political junkies know what he's referring to. I think when he was talking about the Russia collusion hoax and all that, he referred to it as Russia, Russia, Russia. The person who's been out of the election cycle for the last 4 years that comes back is like, all right, what's going on? Is like, what is he talking about? We know what that is in regards to, how, the whole setup to try to basically just really make Trump, it really kind of attack the Trump presidency before it even started and downplay it as something that it was illegitimate. And so, yeah, I would say that Trump could have articulated better. He spoke in a way of people who know what he's talking about. And so I think that's probably where he could hit home on the next one the best is he hit on some issues. Like I think you mentioned like immigration, like that's one of the biggest issues this election. I think he hit that well, but I think just articulating everything in general, I think he could have articulated better, the political corruption, the political, where the left is coming after and their political enemies with lawfare. I think he could have articulated that better. And so I think that there's opportunity for him to really slam dunk in the next one if he can communicate a little bit better.
How do you think he articulated his points there, Rick?
I would definitely agree with Austin to an extent that, he didn't kind of word it for the everyman like he did in the past. However, some of the issues like Russia, I believe that everybody knows what he's talking about. I would be very surprised if people didn't, not because, it's obvious, more so because all this stuff happened 2017, 2018, 2019. There's been years of passing of time, and the media has, every time CNN, Fox, any news network comes on, that's all they've been talking about. So, like, if you don't know at this point, I'm not sure that you ever will. I don't think him standing on the stage and explaining it to you will get you to understand it. I also believe in this election, I actually believe there's going to be a lot of no votes, because I believe that the people that are undecided are just going to stay hard-headed and undecided. The Libertarian Party, sorry, Austin, 2020, 1.2%. Before that, 3.3%. I think that sometimes they just, maybe you can explain it better, Austin, but I think a lot of them most of the Libertarian votes come from states and areas of the country where their vote isn't going to matter anyways. And so they just kind of light it on fire and throw it away. And I don't think that we're going to win those people over in any of the debates. I'm not sure if he can articulate many of his points differently. I actually think that Trump did fairly good at making arguments to win over Libertarian voters, because he could have went super hardcore conservative on a lot of these issues, and that's just not him. He actually kind of put more towards the middleman and like the abortion issue, sending it back to the states. Whether I agree with that 100% or not, that was the middleman argument that needed to be made. And so I think he did a really good job in this debate of at least trying.
Yeah, and when it comes to the abortion stuff, I agree. He definitely played to the middle a lot more. And it'll be interesting because there's a small sliver of the right that the pro-life issue is their one issue. They're one-issue voters. And I think there's a lot of them that are unhappy with how he's playing to the middle, even though he probably is the most pro-life president we've ever had. I think that it'll be interesting to see if those people that are one-issue voters on this topic, basically take their ball and go home. If they're like, man, Trump's turned on us as pro-lifers. He doesn't believe in stopping abortion 100% of the time. I'm out. Like, that will be interesting versus how many he will pick up by being more moderate. But I agree with Ricky. I think he won that issue. I think a lot of people have talked about this. That was a question that was set up for basically an easy slam dunk for Biden. And Biden missed the opportunity, and Trump turned it around and basically kind of made it at least a semi-win.
Can I ask Austin something, Cristian? So so on that issue, Austin, the slam dunk, I think the answer was Trump's answer to make right there, the slam dunk. What do you think a slam dunk answer for Biden would have been right there? Because I'm not so sure that him answering, sending it back to the states is a slam dunk for Democrat voters. I think they really wanted him to really come down hard on the abortion issue. I think that's his voter base and their kind of foundation.
No, agreed. And a slam dunk for him would have been basically, and he tried to communicate this and it kind of fell apart. And that's why I don't think it was a slam dunk for him. Basically, a lot of people look at the last election as one of the aspects of why the Republicans lost in 2020 was a backlash of, the single woman voter that, still wants abortion. Roe had just been overturned, and they came out, and there was at least a wave of those type of voters that came out because they were upset about that issue. If Biden had positioned himself where there's some energy in his base and really said, I'm the champion for women's rights, that would have been a slam dunk. He did this weird thing where he tried to bring up the situation with the illegal immigrant who killed that girl and basically was trying to spin it on, Trump, you want this girl to, bear these guys' child, and Trump's like, you let those illegals in. It was a weird situation, and honestly, he could have had a win, and he didn't play his cards right, I think, for his base.
No, I think he really missed the articulation there, especially because, when it comes to this, the left's best argument is the most outlandish, outrageous one, the biggest, anomaly that's ever happened before. An 11-year-old that, becomes pregnant out of nowhere by any means, and then it's like, you're going to make her have it, and it's like, that's, of course, not the status quo for over 99 point whatever percent of abortions that happen. Like, that's not the case, but they always use that as the standard and the rule. And that is always what they use to drive home the point. He couldn't do it. He wasn't able to articulate that. He wasn't able to go there, which is, a big detriment to him, because that's usually their slam dunk right now. There's so many people that are literally just going to vote based upon that. And he couldn't even articulate the point on that right at all. It's very unfortunate. I want to segue here into the next part here, is that, has Trump done enough to earn the Libertarian vote? And should he care about their vote in the first place? Should he even care? To keep it 100% with you here, has he done enough to earn it? And then obviously we can talk about, is it, a demographic and a block that we need or that we really want?
Well, I would say that it matters, because if it didn't matter, Trump wouldn't have shown up to their convention a few weeks ago. So I think they understand, in the Trump base, or at least the Trump campaign understands, how close this election is going to be. And this is where, we get into coalition building. And if you're trying to find just that little bit that's going to get you across the finish line, if it's going to be a close race, you're looking for any inch you can get. And then you start looking around, who do I have most in common with? And Trump looked to the Libertarians, this third largest party in the United States. He was given an invitation, which has never been done, where another party's nominee came and spoke to a party that's going to nominate someone else. It was interesting, and honestly, a great marketing move on the Libertarian Party's side, because honestly, the convention usually comes and goes, and the average person knows nothing about it, didn't even know it happened. So the fact that people are even talking about it, it was a good move on the LP side. That being said, did Trump do enough? And I can speak from personal experience here as someone who's still an undecided voter. I voted for Trump in 2016, I voted for Trump in 2020, and I think there's a lot of right-leaning libertarians that would consider him possibly, but a lot of the issues, he spent $8 trillion during his presidency. And honestly, I thought that was a losing moment for him during the debate when they brought that up. And it was kind of a stark contrast, where the CNN people are saying, hey, Trump, you spent $8 trillion. Biden, you spent $4 trillion. You both are terrible on this. And that's not getting any sort of libertarian votes. The issues on, he's put some great judges in the courts on the gun stuff. But he also, the famous quote, "Take the guns, due process later," is a quote that will haunt him forever when it comes to the Second Amendment issue. When he left Fauci in it, when podcasters can figure out, hey, this COVID thing doesn't seem to be what Fauci's saying. The podcasters of the world shouldn't have been able to figure this out before Trump did and his people, and gotten rid of Fauci. The personnel issues, the constant, just dumb things he says, where he screams at the deep state, but then goes and says, hey, I'm going to build the FBI at headquarters bigger and better than ever before. So those are the type of things that, as libertarians, are like, we don't have a lot in common with you. And then you throw these things in. It's a libertarian that's voting for Trump is holding their nose, and Trump needs to make it as easy as possible. And that's where I think the VP pick is going to be really big and is a deciding factor on who he picks there. I think if Vivek was the VP, which it doesn't look like it's going to, I think that would really help a lot of the right-leaning libertarians who are now alienated from their party due to the fact that an unfortunate situation of a left-leaning libertarian, Chase Oliver, getting the nomination. There's a whole chunk of these right libertarians, basically 2/3 of the party, that don't want to vote for their nominee, but they're also like, we don't love this Trump guy either. If Trump were to make it as easy as possible, he could potentially get some of these votes. I'm rambling here. I can let you guys interject here a little bit, but there's more dug in.
I mean, I can make it easier for you. You just walk in there, check Donald Trump on election day, and there, hey, that's as easy as it gets, man. But no, I would make the argument that it does matter. It might shock the world that I think, for people that know me, to think that I believe that the libertarian vote matters. But it does. I actually believe that, despite what some people believe, I think that Trump's in the driver's seat like really well right now, actually. I don't think it's going to, if the election were tomorrow, I don't think that it would be even relatively close. Now, it can change until November, but when you look at projections and kind of what historically has happened, a lot of times these undecided voters come election day kind of sway towards the right. And so it happened in 2020, it happened in 2016. In some areas, Trump was actually losing a lot more than he ended up losing by, as far as the polls show. So I think that, yes, he wants to win in a landslide. I think for his sake, he needs to win in a landslide. However, I believe that I really just believe that there's going to be a large portion of the Libertarian Party that just decides not to vote. And I don't think that I put the blame on Trump for that. I really believe that, we were talking about this pre-show, where I think that sometimes, as in, like, if you were in Trump's shoes, you have to do and say the things that make you more likely to win. Whether I like it, whether I agree with what he said, your ultimate goal is to win. You can implement whatever you believe in, what you want to accomplish once you win. And so, like, not removing Dr. Fauci, for instance, I agree. I think Fauci should be under a jail. He cost a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world their lives. And even the people that didn't die from COVID, some people lost everything. But I have to look back on the situation that Trump was in going into an election year where all of the media was against him. And if he would have taken the world's leading expert in this subject, Fauci, for whatever reason, and fired him in that moment, he would have lost the election in a landslide. The media would have dragged him through the mud, left, right, and center. He would have never survived that. It would have been career execution. And we wouldn't have known. We wouldn't have known that he's right now. We wouldn't have known that he's right now because we wouldn't have had the Fauci evidence anymore. He would have been gone. Put yourselves in his shoes. I don't think that you would do the same thing. We all like to think that, given the opportunity, hindsight's 2020, we'd all do the right thing. I don't think all of us would. And then, as far as the spending the money, look at projections. Trump, his first 3 years, did not do well with how much he spent, trillions of dollars. But the vast majority of what they note comes from the COVID years. The vast majority of what he spent came from COVID. So it's not an even playing field when you compare those numbers. I really believe that when it's all said and done, I do believe we'll get libertarians like Austin Erickson to put on their MAGA hat, and we'll get those votes, and we'll win by 6 or 7% in all the swing states, and it'll be all fine and dandy. But
yeah, my question for you, Austin, here is that if you were living in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, what does this look like for you now, right? I think that you might be a little bit more keen and a little bit more locked in on, like, a little more leeway here on, like, I need to support Trump here because it's really going to matter. It's going to be a more contested race.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm in California, so it does not matter what I do, at least, for the foreseeable future. California's electoral votes are going to go to whoever the Democrat is. It doesn't matter. So at least I have the luxury of being able to be like, my vote doesn't matter that much. I can be a little bit more stingy. Now, if I'm in a swing state, yeah, to be fair, I'm probably, even though I'm holding my nose, I'm probably going to vote for Trump because at the very least, there was some good things he was on. And I would say libertarians probably should, especially with our candidate that's Chase Oliver, which is not a great option either. Like, go ahead and vote for Trump. Like, if you're in a swing state, at least we got some good stuff. We got some good 2A judges who, they're not perfect, but have delivered us wins. There were some tax cuts, there were deregulations, there were some wins. Now, this is where I would probably disagree with Rickey, is that he could have done more. And I think that he there's so many niche issues that libertarians care so much about. If it's freeing Julian Assange or people like him, Edward Snowden, Ross Ulbricht, like those are the type of things that there's no political downside really when it comes to the left-right thing to throw the libertarians a bone. And if he had taken seriously, freeing some of those political prisoners somewhat, if he had, just put some better people in his cabinet, if he hadn't, printed, I don't care what your excuse is, $8 trillion, $8 trillion is what he printed, like if we're talking about the ridiculous inflation that we've seen, we're talking two-thirds of what's been printed over the last few years have been Trump, and then a third Biden. Like 2/3 of whatever our grocery prices are skyrocketing right now are because of Trump. He didn't have to do that. And like I said, even if you give him some leeway in the first couple months, like, okay, we didn't know what was going on, but within the first couple of months, podcasters were figuring this out. There were reputable doctors that were coming out that, were saying, hey, this vaccine just doesn't, this has been rushed. We shouldn't be doing this. Like, I think the right gives Trump way too many passes. And I think libertarians are always in the place of reminding conservatives to be consistent when it comes to liberty and principles.
I mean, here's the thing, though, about this is that it's easy. We can sit down and look back, reflect, and be like 100%, where the heck are we going with this here? I think we could all admit, like, when COVID first started, we all knew something was up and it was shifty and, whatever else of the sort. Again, he had people in his corner that weren't good, a big time, like throughout his presidency, a lot of undermining things happening. And now the question of this is like, in the future, is what's this presidency look like with those same people? Do we have better people in there in place to make better decisions? And also, like, to what extent, like, who in his family is more involved, and is that good or is it bad? Looking at like what that looks like here in the future. And my thing here now is that, like, in reality, he showed up, they started booing like immediately at the Libertarian Party convention. At that point, he's showing up in good faith, trying to make the appeal, and they're just booing it. Like, I can't blame him for just saying, hey, enjoy your 3%. Like, like, whatever. It's just like, it's Comic-Con, dude. This is a bunch of Comic-Con LARPers there that are showing up that don't take showers. That hey, I want to make friends with certain people, but at a certain point, dude, it's like my kindness has ran out. We've done what we can, but no matter what, it's not going to be good enough. And it's time to cut our losses and focus on the other demographics and other things that could actually get us to victory in all these key states. So it's just kind of like, at some point, it's too much. It's like, no matter what, it's never enough. There's never enough liberty. There's never enough. And it almost turns into like a liberal where it's never enough diversity. It's never enough DEI. It's never enough, there's always some boogeyman of something like hiding in the corner. And it's just like, I see it as the same way. There's never an end game when it comes to libertarianism. Like, I've never seen an end game here.
Well, and listening and hearing from people who were at the convention, I wasn't there, but the Libertarian Party and a lot of the people on the right, and at least the Republicans, they ignore libertarians basically all the time, and then all of a sudden they're like trying to make judgments on what's going on at this convention. What a lot of Republicans don't know is that there's been a civil war within the Libertarian Party.
What's his name? Nick Sorter and all those people.
0.5% of the 0.1%.
I've followed a bit of it. To be fair, I've looked at a bit of it. I've seen a little bit of it.
Yeah, and you guys are probably more informed than the average person, but the average Trump supporter sees them booing Trump and they're like, oh my gosh. Well, also understand the Libertarian Party is split, and basically, even the right libertarians control most of the party. And there was an unfortunate situation, and we don't have to get into it, why our nominee ended up being a left libertarian. But basically, there's a small percentage, maybe a third of those people are the left libertarians, and they're the crazies, and they're the ones that were booing Trump. You also had in there RFK supporters that were booing because RFK had spoke there. And then you also, it was a mess. You had RFK supporters, you had the left-leaning libertarians, you had the right-leaning libertarians, you had the Trump supporters, and you throw them all into a room, and they're all fighting each other, and then you throw Trump in the mix. It was definitely a mess. But I also think that this idea of, oh, it's never enough liberty, throw up your hands in the air. Like come on, Cristian. Like,
is there really? But is it ever going to be good enough? No matter what, like, no matter what concessions the Republicans have made to libertarians, whatever different things that we've done that they agree with, it's always like, that's cool and all, but then like this, and that, like the goalposts seem to still get moved. Like, right? It's that, and always like there's always the most unproductive hill to die on for some.
What have Republicans given libertarians to work with over the last 20 years?
Hey, Trump is promising a cabinet seat. There you go. There's so many that get one voted in.
What?
I said Trump is promising libertarians a cabinet seat. You're not going to get one voted in anywhere. So.
Well, and this is where props to Trump. He was actually the first Republican who's actually went to libertarians in I don't know how long and said, hey, here's my pitch to you. I appreciate that a lot, honestly. Like, that's big because at least he tried. Like, I think, we can talk about how his pitch could have been better, but he went there and said, I'll put one of your members in my cabinet. I'll free Ross Ulbricht. Like, basically he said, I'm a libertarian myself, which, that triggered a lot of libertarians too. But, he did try. So props to Trump. I think that he did do something, but to say like, oh, it didn't work. Like, one, we haven't even had the election. Throw your hands up in the air. Like, no, I think you're going to look at this. And I think that Trump will get a larger portion of the libertarian vote than he probably would have if he hadn't gone. And I think it can be won over, but you guys got to stop being dirty authoritarian conservatives. Like,
here's the thing. Dirty authoritarian. It's just it is the name game. It's just like, hey, there's a morality, there's a right and a wrong, and you shouldn't be able to sell heroin to a 5-year-old. And yes,
that's not what we're talking about.
No. I'm just saying, like, there's just certain things where it comes to like, yeah, there's hierarchy. Like, right, democracy isn't great. By itself, it's just mob rule. It's nonsense. As well as, while saying that and saying that the deep state and the elites are bad and we need to get rid of them, hierarchy is still needed. Okay, there's still hierarchy that's needed, right? This isn't just a clean house and get rid of it and replace it with nothing, like everybody always says. Get it, replace it with nothing. Like, that's not reality. That's not the real world. It's not going to work.
Well,
this idea that we couldn't replace huge portions of the largest government the world has ever seen is ridiculous. No,
I'm not saying that, but like in the general, people are always like, there shouldn't even be a president. There shouldn't even be whatever. Hey, wait, the federal agencies, I think we could all agree right now, we should probably get rid of just about all of them. Hey, cool. We can all shake hands and get there. But there's quite a few, things when it comes to the police force or the idea of firefighters and like, public services and utilities.
I know. And you guys just need to come around to the idea of privatizing. And stop being socialists on the issue, and then you guys can get the libertarian vote.
Here, Austin. All right, so this is the reality here is that Mad Max and Passion of the Christ both had Mel Gibson in them, but he played two different characters. Okay, don't get them conflated, right? This is not what we want here. We don't want Mad Max out there in the world running crazy. So
that's right.
So shifting gears again. Who should be Trump's vice presidential choice? I know we've had plenty of discussion this last week about who's it look like it's going to be? Who do we think it should be? So first, let's go into realistically, who does it look like? And then we can talk about ideally who we want it to be. Ricky, who are you thinking here?
Realistically, I really believe it's either Burgum or JD Vance. If it's Burgum, I'm probably voting with Austin. But if it's JD Vance is a smart guy, well liked, especially in the Turning Point community. We all know who he is. My problem with JD Vance, I said it the other day in our chats. When I tell my mom, hey, Trump might choose JD Vance, she has no idea who I'm talking about. The average voter has no idea who that is. His name recognition is terrible. And the only bright side about him is he is a really smart guy. He's very knowledgeable. And his personality would take a backseat to Trump's, so I think that they would get along well. But that's definitely not who I'd like.
Yeah, of the few names that have been swirling around, probably the most likely is JD at this moment, unless the Trump campaign is really seeing a lot of lawfare after the election, and fighting over votes counting and whatnot. he might pick Burgum just because he comes with a huge amount of money. And so we'll see. I think of the bad options he has, JD Vance is the least bad. Just again, like Ricky said, no one knows who he is really. He has his backstory in his book. You know, there's some knowledge of him, but are people going to put that together? I don't know. And so when it comes to who it should be, and I already kind of alluded to this, Vivek should have been his pick. It really had I think his two best options were Vivek, who would help him with the Libertarian vote, would also help him with the younger voters. You know, he's a young guy who can really connect with the younger generation. Trump, you know, he's an old guy. He's an old guy. A lot of people love him. I still like him personality wise, but having someone younger, who could be an energizer on the campaign trail, Vivek was that guy, and he could have helped bring in those libertarians on the right. The other person that could have worked really well would have been Tulsi, but the reason Tulsi wouldn't have worked, and I'm not a huge fan of Tulsi, but Tulsi could have gotten the left moderates to try to come over. The problem is now RFK's in the mix, and all those votes that probably Tulsi would have pulled are now RFK voters. So really, I think Trump's really missing out by not picking Vivek as a VP. We'll see what happens, but I think for those reasons, Vivek should have been the pick. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. He better go with JD.
I think realistically, it's probably JD Vance. I know he doesn't get enough credit here. The only downfall I see with this guy is that he's from the state of Ohio. It's pretty brutal.
Never heard of him.
I know it's unfortunate. What a terrible place. Shout out to everybody from Ohio. Can't stand it. So Nick is probably watching. Anyways, but no, I mean I think and people want to play the minority game. His wife's Indian. He's got an Indian baby. Don't hate on JD for this. Hey.
I think that's going to hurt him actually, because there was an interview where she was talking about how she wasn't Christian. And so like those same people that are holding up their nose about Vivek and like, oh, he's not Christian. Like you have JD Vance, who's married to a non-Christian who he espouses to be a Christian. So I think the Christian community might not look on that very fondly either.
I don't think they're going to hold up the wife as much as they will the man.
Probably.
I think the head of the household here is what really will drive it home. And we talk a lot about, we want to put in the evangelical Christian family man. Hey, the nuclear family wins. It does win elections. I think it should be a nuclear family, absolutely. But, and I'll make this argument to Christians so often, is we have these evangelical Christians that, quote, evangelical Christians, strong Christians that we put in office. And then when it comes to standing up for religious freedom, they're nowhere to be found. The same people that let them open up strip clubs and shut down churches during the COVID pandemic and sat idly by, when you have a guy that is a professing monotheistic Hindu, don't know how that works, don't know how that's a real thing. Hopefully he finds Jesus, I'm praying that he does. But that would absolutely probably defend our religious freedoms, in this country harder than most would. That's a trade-off I think I could actually deal with realistically. We're kind of fed up with the status quo. Hey, Vivek, I think would be a great option as a VP pick. I think him and Trump together, it's not a yin and yang, honestly. It's just like two yins right there, like back to back. Like that's great energy there. I'm not sure, you made the point for what it definitely attracts. I think it does. I also think that it could potentially hurt us here in the future, gearing up for the long run for 2 full terms here coming 2028, 2032. So I think that he's going to play this strategically. He's going to maybe be somewhere in the cabinet, somewhere in the campaign, potentially wherever he might be, and then reemerge again when it's time to go for the next cycle, be ready to go. Idealistically, like I really wouldn't mind a Ben Carson in there. I'll tell you what, people think Ben's too mild-mannered, this and that. Ben's got some lion energy in him that people don't really want to see. That guy's strong. He's convicted. He gets things done. He's after it. He was in the Trump presidency the first time as HUD, the urban development, in there. And I could say he was one of his best advocates there. He wasn't the snake in the grass that was undermining the campaign and his presidency. Definitely somebody that's been there before, that sees what's going on and absolutely knows what needs to be done. I think he makes an appeal to certain people in the Black community as well as certain people in the faith community. I think it's definitely better, night and day better than Tim Scott would be. Fair enough. But I think it could be a legit appeal. Unfortunately, I don't think Ben's necessarily in the running, but he's going to do everything he can to help, and it'll be much appreciated. But don't really like the idea of Doug Burgum, Kristi Noem, proverbially shot the dog on that one. Screwed the pooch there, and that one's dead on arrival as well. But I think sooner to the RNC here within a few weeks, we're going to find out who it is. I don't think it'll be the biggest surprise, but
with Carson, like I agree. Like he's a good old boy, like nice guy. I don't think people dislike him. I just don't think he adds a whole bunch. People could argue that he's going to help with the black vote. I don't think that's a vote that's really in play that much at all.
If you niche it up, black male voters, that would be the demographic that we're looking to pull.
Do they vote that much? I think that I agree that the black male voters are more willing to vote Trump, but I don't think they actually show up, and we haven't seen it yet. And I know a lot of conservatives really want this portion of the voters to show up, and it seems like it's kind of a waste of time so far. And there's better efforts.
Yeah, it's not the most fruitful, but I do think you're going to see a decent shift with black male voters this time around. Like, there's going to be a lot more turnout, and I think there's a lot more that are going to vote for Trump than you think. As far as black educated college women, forget about it. Yeah, right? Forget about it. We're looking at 95% blue or more.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. That's where we're at with it. But black men right now, I think we're trending. What was the last time? Close to 20% or so. That's what we're looking to hunt for, maybe potentially. I think you could maybe get something close to that, maybe a little bit more. That'd be awesome. I think it makes a dent, especially in swing states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, those areas that really need it. So I think it's a big help there.
The other thing with this whole VP aspect that we didn't touch on is, the VP should really be a deterrent for assassination. And I think a lot of people have seen the horrors of what government can do. I think a lot of people are kind of getting red pilled on how dangerous our government and the CIA and the FBI are, and this idea that they wouldn't consider assassinating a president that could potentially go in and try to cut the deep state. He needs someone who essentially is his Kamala for Biden. People don't want to get rid of Biden because they have Kamala. He has Kamala, who's even worse. And so he needs that. And I fear that if he picks someone like even a JD Vance, who's better of some of the options that are out there, that's not a deterrent. How is JD Vance going to be, Speaker Johnson, who, has a great resume, but then gets power. And then all of a sudden is just a complete sellout.
Well, this is the issue. This is a conservative versus libertarian thing here, right? What good is power that you have if you don't wield it? I think you just made that point. I think you made the point right there. What good is it to we're fighting to get power? Then when we have it, we don't use it and wield it the way that we said we were going to.
What are you talking about? I'm talking about how the deep state, right? Which the deep state has grown both under the Republicans and the Democrats, and probably is pulling way more of the strings than we understand.
All of them.
What was that?
They're pulling all of the strings.
Honestly, like, who knows, right? But the point is, you need someone that's going to actually, because Trump is probably he's honestly a moderate at the end of the day. Like, if you're talking about the grand scheme of political ideologies, he's a moderate. He's probably going to cut some stuff, but that still made the deep state really upset. That you need someone who they're going to be like, if we take this guy out, you're going to have a Vivek who's going to try to cut 75% of everything. Like, that's what he needs. And I'm worried he's not taking it seriously enough that his life could be in danger from the deep state.
I would make the argument, one, that you're 100% right, Austin, that it needs to be a deterrent for things like that. But also, one of the reasons you grab your MAGA hat when he leans towards Vivek is that would be the closest to a libertarian victory that you could ever get to the White House ever. And so that's why I lean Vivek, is he brings a lot to the table that he's going to get a lot of the libertarian young voters, because let's be honest here, every election cycle, a bunch of young people have the opportunity to run for president and win, and most voters don't vote for them. That's why they lose in the primaries and stuff like that. But you're going to have a guy that can bring in a lot of votes, a lot of young votes, huge name recognition. But also, I like Vivek because I think that this is a different time in the country than it was in 2016, where I think Trump is thinking, and I think his advisors are thinking, we need somebody that isn't as front facing so that Trump's personality can stick out. But I would argue that if we find a way to win this election, despite all the odds as far as the deep state coming after us, he's going to need somebody that can stand on a podium behind him, also addressing the media with the same vigor and the same intensity, because they're going to be coming after him. The media is not going to quit. And so we need somebody that brings something to the table more than just, oh, look, he can stand there and be quiet.
Exactly, like a Mike Pence.
Yeah.
What a nightmare that was. Yeah, what a nightmare that really was. One of the final things here I'm going to shift to, and this is speaking more generally, big picture here, thinking, should the future of the right be a big tent? Should it be a big tent for libertarians? Should it be a big tent for other different types of groups that maybe aren't conventional, to the idea of being, right-wing conservative in that slant there? And how far and how much should we allow? How much should we say, no, that probably isn't a great idea? And what does that look like here in the future, especially with, young Gen Zers coming through?
What do you think, Ricky?
I think y'all know my answer. No, I don't think it should be a big tent. The fact of the matter is like, I think a lot of people are going to vote with us this election cycle because they've seen the difference. We had 8 years of Obama, 4 years of Trump, and 4 years of Biden. There's a noticeable difference in the quality of life. And I think voters are going to take that to the ballot box. As far as what the future of the right should look like is, I think we've made it a big tent for the last 40 years. And what has that gotten us besides the country falling to hell in a handbasket? I think that we need to get back to true conservative values, let people into the right that stand for the right thing, stand for God and stand for government. And I think that, if someone like Austin wants to meet us in the middle on election day and vote for the right candidate instead of burning his ballot, then we'll take them for that day.
Well, here's what I would say is that the right was a big tent for the wrong people for a long time. And that was the neocons. Essentially, before Trump came along, you had the Republican Party picking, John McCain, Mitt Romney, like neocons who are closer to Democrats at the end of the day than what conservatives are now. And honestly, I think that's probably been one of the biggest things that Trump has done is taken and basically cut off that portion of the tent of the dirty neocons. I know that the Nikki Haley supporters, there's one or two of them still out there, but overall they've either went independent, they've gone to the left. And so I think that was a good portion of the tent that was cut off, because that's not the type of people you want to associate with because they're essentially your enemies. Where we're at right now is, you cut off that portion of the tent, and then you need to add another portion if you want it to continue to be a big tent. And this is where there's an opportunity. And I think the future is libertarian populism. And this is actually something Vivek has talked about, and Ricky's laughing, but it's serious. And I think it's something similar to what we've seen with Milei in Argentina, who really is kind of this Trump-like figure, and really, I think, is better than Trump in a lot of ways, because he has that populism, like, for the common man, and really helps the common man. Like, hey, it's, Trump does it in a way where he's like, they sent your jobs to Mexico. It's those dirty illegals that are coming and taking your jobs, and kind of creating that type of populism, where Milei has said, hey, it's those filthy, dirty communists. It's those politicians. It's the people that hold power. It's the government bureaucrats that they're the enemy of the people, and really built a movement and got elected based on that message, that it's a populist message for the people against the root of the problem, which is government, which is the politicians who are getting rich. And you're seeing the results after he hasn't even been president that long. And already inflation has been dropped down to zero after 120% the year before. Like that's the type of thing that I think is the future, where libertarianism helps you guys get to the root of the problem, because you guys, you conservatives, they hold on to the one ring. They don't want to throw it away, and I think that's the future, is messaging a conservative libertarian message with populism that helps get the common man behind it and helps them understand, where they need to be directed and to best help themselves. That's the type of big tent that needs to happen in the future.
So,
I mean, go ahead. And one of the things that I just want to hammer home is I think you can find a lot of common ground with conservatives as it comes to foreign policy, right? And then how we're spending our money overseas, if we should spend any at all. But I think that the fundamental difference here is because when making that populist argument is because we're thinking of the common man and the people, because they need to come first above all else, rather than ideas of free markets or this and that. Because I do think it's beneficial. I think it's a system that benefits us. I also think it's a system that can be exploited and that can hurt us very much so in the same wavelength here. I think corporatism runs its route with it. I think at the end of the day, if Americans are getting hurt, we need to find a solution that benefits them, more so than all of it. And I think, hey, there's might be some middle ground to be made there that we can maybe get to some agreement on. But I think there's a little differentiation there, but I think there's some ground to be made. Ricky, what do you have there?
I was just going to ask, when we talk about the future of the right in the big tent, and then Austin wants to interject his 3% and then call it the libertarian populist tent. And that's my problem with the libertarian. It would still be the conservative right tent. You would just have some libertarians in there. It wouldn't be the libertarian tent.
Yeah, it is the one thing is it's like if you get invited to this, you don't get to run the show necessarily. And that's like the one thing. And it's like, I think there's things to adopt that might be helpful, this and that. But when we have people that are outsiders coming in and then trying to direct and run the show, I think one thing is that we did that with the right already with the Big Ten. I think it's hurt us. I think we're losing a lot of evangelical support because of the rampant acceptance of homosexuality, just different things, behaviors that are unbecoming of that community that they see as a problem, that are like, man, I don't even know if I could support Trump now because this, and that. The RNC is coalescing, building coalitions with the log cabins. And then people are like, man, I don't know if that lines up with my values anymore. And I think that's something that we definitely have to look at, going down the road, because that's like, again, we talk about, the black voter demographic. Is it really going to make a difference in dent and a change? Very well may not be. I think it's something in the future that's going to take a lot of time to build. But as far as the LGBT, demographic, I don't see that changing at all. And I don't think it's worth spending money or investing in really to make that jump to. And I also think that in reality, in the long run, I think it hurts because we're losing those people that we've had for decades, those hard Southern Bible Belt Baptist people that we love so much, that are like, man, I don't know if I can do this anymore, because of we just see a very worldly intake now into the party. And, I think that we have to consider that when looking at what are we willing to sacrifice in order to gain? And is it a net positive or a negative with it? Just thinking numbers wise with it, objective, what my personal opinion is on what I think about it, rather than reality of what's that number going to look like now with accepting these.
Well, and this is where you guys need the libertarian side of things, because you guys get caught up. You see a problem and you go after the symptom instead of the root of the problem. You see the drag queen story hour at the local library, and you're like, that's the problem. We gotta regulate it, rather than the fact that there's a library that's funded by stolen taxpayer money. That we wouldn't be having a conversation if government wasn't already involved in stupid things that it shouldn't be. And so that's why when I say the populism, I think the conservative movement right now under Trump is not necessarily super conservative, but you have all sorts of people that believe all sorts of things. That's why I say the populist is really more the quote unquote conservative side of that. But you need the libertarians to help you guys figure out what's the root of the problem and not getting hooked up on the culture war issues, which most of the culture war issues would go away if you actually focused on what was important, ending the Fed, where you're actually, imagine if our dollars weren't getting inflated to ridiculous, amounts, and you could actually, people could pay to feed their kids and all this crap. That's the root of the problem, instead of talking about, jobs going away. If you ended the Fed, that would make so much more of a difference than all these other issues we're talking about. And so that's where libertarians have the answers. Conservatives,
But
libertarians can be better at messaging to you guys. But anyways,
I think we got to do both here as far as like, sure, hey, the Department of Education's got to go, as well as these reprehensible things that are happening within education that like have to be weeded out. People got to go to jail. People need to be held accountable for this, of course. But, just looking and saying like, we just need to abolish the Fed and this and that, like, we have people that are hurting here when we go deep into economic theory and economic policy and like ending this and ending that. And they're like, how does this benefit and help me like right away? As far as the messaging goes, like we definitely need to provide answers for them there and things that are going to help them like, right away as it comes to that. Now, hey, ending the Fed, for it. Is it that feasible right this moment? No. Okay. No,
well, it could be. It could be. But the right hasn't put pressure on Trump to actually make that happen. That would be one of the biggest things. Like, if you want conservatives to win for the next couple elections, end the Fed and see the benefits that this country will feel. Like, seriously.
But another problem with libertarians is that you jump to the biggest issues. There's a lot of little issues that we need to start fixing today. And then we can get, look, I will hear you out on any plan that you have for ending the Fed, but also a lot of y'all's answers to problems is in hindsight, just like the COVID argument earlier. Your answer is knowing the situation that we ended up with Fauci 4 years later. Then you bash Trump and he's not good enough to win your vote because hindsight's 2020 and you would have made a better decision. It's the reason I can't buy into the libertarian argument is the same reason that I can't buy into the socialist argument or the communist argument on college campuses. Is the fact of the matter is everything's hindsight and everything is, I would have made a better decision than all the people that everyone else elected to put in that position. I would have made a better decision looking back on the situation. And I don't think that that's the argument that the American people can buy. The Libertarian Party is, it's a good idea. In hindsight, it's everything is like, hey, this happened, I would have done this. It's never, hey, this is about to happen, let's do this.
That is absolutely ridiculous. Okay,
it's not ridiculous.
And honestly,
if it was ridiculous, then y'all would support Donald Trump right now. Because hear me out. Donald Trump is not a hardcore Republican, and he's not a Democrat. He was a lifelong Democrat. He is through and through what the right Libertarian Party, whatever you want to call that, the right Libertarian Party that can't even win its own elections, even though it has 2/3 of the vote, apparently, would put up as a candidate. He is not a staunch Republican. The only reason he ran in 2016 as a Republican was because there is zero path to victory for a libertarian, because as much as you say, I stand for the voice of the people aren't going to go to the ballot box and vote for you because your ideas are nonsensical at times. You can't just walk up and say, I'm going to fix the biggest problem because I saw it happen 20 years ago and now I'm going to completely remove it.
No, and this is the thing. And what you're saying is what I've actually said about the right, honestly. It's the libertarians that are saying the correct thing. And it's years later, the conservatives come around to the idea, oh, wait, the libertarians were right. If it was the anti-war, if it was, Ron Paul here, who stands up on a stage in 2008 and 2012 and looks out at a crowd of neocons and says, hey, we need to stop doing all these endless wars in the Middle East. Like, that was the libertarian position. We were screaming at you guys, stop. But no, you guys put McCain, you guys put Romney in, or when it came to COVID, the libertarians were the first ones to say, hey, these lockdowns go against our principles. We shouldn't be doing this. I was giving you guys the benefit of the doubt, if you believe that government could lock you down. Or libertarians have been screaming about the FBI and the CIA. And now conservatives are just now figuring out, wait a second, these guys aren't on our side. Or even the police. Like, a lot of conservatives are getting red-pilled on the police when it came to COVID. Wait, these guys who we backed are now coming and shutting down our churches, and our kids, didn't wear a mask to school and they're arresting our kids. Like, libertarians have been saying these things for decades, and conservatives figure it out way down the line.
And before we get to the final thoughts here, because we need to wrap up here in a moment, one thing I will say is just that, like, while there are so many, hey, great ideas, right? Never that many people that really work to put those into fruition. There's a lot of people talking heads that really are looking just to talk. But also I see it with, like, we talk about these group of so-called frogs on this side of people that are very, very odd. And the thing is, they might have a lot of plausible points and things that might be realistic that are actually like, hey, that's actually like somewhere where we might need to go. But then they always say something silly, outlandish, rude, stupid, racist, whatever it might be, and ruin everything. I think that the libertarians similarly have like these decent points, and they do something to just totally ruin it and lose everybody in their base. They say something that's totally off-putting, or they jump into something totally off base that means nothing. It's totally nonsensical. People are like, you had me for a moment, now you lost me. And then unfortunately people don't stick around. And I think realistically, like, that's an issue, is that you guys can't get out of your own way at times when it comes to these things. And it's like, that's the reality. Is like, there's a lot of good ideas here, but there's also like, dude, what are we talking about today? It's just like, and then you get to the convention and you see it and you're like, man, like there's no unified any sort of voice or like motion behind this. And it's like, while you're saying like libertarians have been saying this, it's like this libertarian said it and this libertarian said it, this person over here, this and that. But like nobody as a group could get together and just be like, this is what we need to do, and like get everybody on board. And that's like a big thing, is that until like that really happens, I don't see like genuine traction being made.
Austin
here.
finds one libertarian ever that said that one time, and that's what the Libertarian Party is, and that's what it was, and it's always been right. And they've only lost elections because the Libertarian Party is correct and everybody else is an idiot. Like, no, he finds one libertarian ever in history that said the right things, and it's hanging on this wall behind his head, and now it's like Jesus Christ.
Hey. Again, hindsight, looking back, Ron was the man.
Like libertarians have been saying this for decades.
Not libertarians. You can't even win your own party. Look at your platform. Who is your candidate? Your argument is our candidate is super left leaning, not because it's the Libertarian Party, but because we have 2/3 of the support on the right, and somehow we still didn't get the primary candidate we wanted. That's a stupid argument. That's a stupid argument.
So
all right. I'll let you rebuttal, then we'll wrap up with our final thoughts. Go ahead, Austin.
I don't disagree in regards to Chase Oliver. Like the situation was bad. There's backstory of how it happened. But if you look at all the other positions within the party, majority of them are controlled by right libertarians. And we didn't go into the backstory of that. But no, like if you look at the party platform, and it's been very consistent. If you've been looking at all the writings, I have a bunch of the books on the shelves right here of libertarians who've been writing books since the 60s. It's very consistent. And I agree with you. The libertarian messaging is terrible. We have, I think, some of the best ideas, but some of the worst messaging and marketing ever. And so we deserve to be made fun of because of how bad that is. But that still doesn't mean that we're not right.
Now, I would say, as far as marketing goes, outside of Donald Trump, the right's marketing is terrible too. But we've always been competitive in elections.
No, for sure. I think the one thing too is that, speaking of that, the right did a horrible job in Kentucky for Daniel Cameron last election cycle. They couldn't make any sort of pro-life ad that would stick up for what they were crushing him with. And it's horrible. It made us out to be monsters and losers. And they didn't have any rebuttal for their crazy abortion ad. Like, and that's like, honestly, it's like, do we not have any messaging here that can combat these like craziest accusations? And I think until we get younger people in there, run for office, folks. Sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of Chris Gaffer here at the moment, where he tells everybody run for office, run for office, run for office. But you need to. These people aren't changing anything anytime soon. And if we want to like make that happen, you got to get involved. You got to do something. So please hop in there. But final thoughts here, guys. At some point, we are going to have to jump into the argument about legislating morality and why we should or should not. And that'll be a whole fun hour that we'll do at some point in the future. But I want to open this up for you guys here. Final thoughts here before we wrap up here and head on out.
Honestly, I would say it's exciting times in regards to politics in general. Not many people get to live and kind of see the end of an empire, and that's kind of where we're at. At least we're in the final stages of an empire. It can still be turned around. Things can still get better, but it's a very unique time, and so I think it's an exciting time. when it comes to a lot of the conversation, I appreciate Cristian and Rickey putting up with my libertarianness. It's always a good time talking with these guys. I think that when it pertains to the conservative libertarian side, I think conservatives have the opportunity to have their libertarian moment of realizing, like, what is actually the root problem, and it always goes back to government. And I think libertarians have an opportunity to learn when it comes to messaging, when it comes to being less autistic. But at the end of the day, I think that conservatives and libertarians have the most in common when you look at the political ideologies. And we have a bunch of crazy communist socialists out there that need to be beat. And so we need to coalesce around the ideas of liberty. So those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, no, my final thoughts are, I think Austin would agree. Me and him talk at least once a week about something political. But I always look forward to talking with him, you, Cristian, because me and you don't always agree on everything. Nick Coca's another good one. But yeah, no, this was fun. I look forward to legislating morality in that debate, because that one's gonna be hilarious. But yeah, it was good. I think, as far as the debate the other night goes, I think, like I said earlier, Donald Trump, I think, is clearly in the driver's seat. If you go through history, projections show that these middle ground voters usually wisen up and vote right towards the end of these elections, and I think we'll be pleasantly surprised come November.
Absolutely. My final message for everybody here, and anybody that's watching: if you don't have a plan to vote yet, please make a plan to vote. If you need help with that, please reach out to any of us here. We're happy to help you get connected to somebody. If you're looking for some involvement or a group to get involved with, please reach out to us as well. We can help you get connected too. This is the most consequential, most important election of our lifetime. We get the cliche here, but honestly, this is going to determine what American society is going to look like for the foreseeable future, and probably, if not, this could be the end. Hey, not to say this is going to be the end, but to scare everybody. But this really does mean a lot. People look to the U.S. as the pinnacle of Western society, and as it's currently crumbling, it can't survive another 4 years like this. So please get engaged. Look at what's going on in your community too. Local elections matter just as much. Figure out what's happening there, and then make a plan and go out there and do it. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It's been great to be back. We'll be doing this a lot more often, I promise. Hold me and Chris accountable. Blow us up. Ask us when the next one's coming. We'll have an answer for you. We promise. But this has been another episode here of Black Friday, where these opinions are not for sale. We will see you later. Thanks for your support.